Hello students, in this new 5 minutes 1 concept series, I'm going to use 5 minutes to explain one important chemistry concept. So for today, we are going to discuss degree of unsaturation. So in a nutshell, what exactly is degree of unsaturation? Basically, it is the number of double bond equivalents this compound has, okay, with reference to the alkanes. Okay, so I will give you an example. So for example, if we have a straight chain alkane C6H14, this is the maximum number of hydrogen that a 6 carbon can have. Okay, so the simplest formula for this alkane will be CnH2n plus 2. Why is it that there is a plus 2 right at the end? It's because if you look at a straight chain alkane, in this case we have 6 carbon, right? Each of the carbon in the middle will have 2 hydrogens, so that's why it's CnH2n. Okay, and then the 2 carbon right at the end will have 2 additional hydrogens. Okay, so I'm going to indicate them in red. Yeah, so this is the origin of the plus 2. Right, so whenever we form a CC double bond, so that's one double bond equivalent, right? So let's say I'm taking out this 2 hydrogen in the middle, and then I'm going to form a double bond. The number of hydrogen will reduce by 2. Yeah, so when the number of hydrogen reduced by 2, right, we say that this compound has 1 degree of unsaturation. Alright, and then what if we form a ring? Okay, so if we form a ring between the 2 ends, it will look something like this. Okay, so maybe I should draw it like this. So if we form a ring like this, so we are going to get a hexagon if we're going to sketch out nicely. So again, the number of hydrogen will reduce by 2, because in order to form the single bond between the 2 carbon at the end, we have to remove 2 hydrogen, because for each hydrogen we remove, right, each of the carbon will have 1 extra electrons, so they become a radical, and then the 2 carbon right at the end will then form a bond. Okay, so that's how we get a minus 2 number of hydrogens. Okay, so you notice that for 1 degree of unsaturation, if the DOU is 1, it can either be 1 CC double bond or 1 ring. Okay, and therefore, right, a simple formula to determine the degree of unsaturation is therefore by looking at the maximum number of hydrogens that number of carbon can have. That would be 2n plus 2, okay, minus of the actual number of hydrogen this compound has, and then divide by 2. Okay, however, some of you might ask, hey, wouldn't this only work with compound containing C and H? Nope. Today I'm going to show you that it also works with compound containing carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Okay, but the interesting thing about oxygen is that you do not need to care about the number of oxygen the compound has. Yeah, so oxygen in that sense, right, will not affect the calculation or the formula you need to calculate the degree of unsaturation. Okay, you might be wondering, why is that the case? Because the maximum number of bonds an oxygen can form is 2. So for example, the one that you are most familiar with is H2O, right? So whenever we include oxygen in the formula, okay, so maybe I have a straight chain carbon. Okay, I have a straight chain carbon like this, with a H here, H here, H here, H here, H, H, and H, right? If I'm going to include an oxygen in over here, right, you notice that it doesn't change the maximum number of hydrogens. Okay, then what if I'm going to include a H right in the middle? Okay, so if I'm going to include an oxygen right in the middle. So if I'm going to include an oxygen right in the middle, you notice that it doesn't change the maximum number of hydrogens. Yeah, so incorporating oxygen in the molecular formula does not change the maximum number of hydrogen that number of carbon can have. Yeah, so oxygen does not change the formula for the degree of unsaturation. What about nitrogen? Nitrogen changed the formula, so you need to account for it. So for example, if I have ethane, for example, okay, you notice that if I'm going to change this hydrogen to nitrogen, okay, so I'm just going to replace this with nitrogen, right? You'll notice that the number of hydrogen actually increased by 1. Yeah, so in order to calculate the degree of unsaturation for nitrogenous compounds, we have to take 2n plus 2, and then we have to add 1 to this formula artificially, and then minus off the maximum number of hydrogen the compound has, and then divide by 2. Yeah, so this is the way that we need to modify the formula for the degree of unsaturation. Yeah, and you notice that you do not need to memorize the formula because the formula can be derived from logic. If you're thinking about what about other heteroatoms, then the formula will have to be modified accordingly. So for example, if I have halogens simply you can just replace them with hydrogens. Okay, and what about sulfur, etc.? Sulfur can form more than 2 bonds, sometimes 2, sometimes 4, sometimes 6. So sulfur-based compound can be a little bit tricky. Yeah, so normally the degree of unsaturation, we will tend to focus on compounds containing largely carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and probably halogens. Okay, yeah. So if you need more information on the calculation of degree of unsaturation, you may refer to the PDF document that I have included in the link below. Okay, so with this, that will be the end of our 5 minutes, one concept series for today.